Thank you for joining me today for the Betterment Project, Episode 4, Part 2 of the Betterment Project. We're going to pick up right where we left off last time. So I'll begin this episode by pointing out that as you progress from the now to the logical, you are slowly subtracting degrees of abstraction from every concept you're working with. Now let's go back to two terms I didn't finish talking about concerning categories. Now these two terms are location and attributes. However, I realize that attributes is such a huge topic that I need to talk about them later. So for now, I'm just going to talk about location and alignment. But just for clarity's sake, I'll pause for a moment here and say that location is an aspect of a category, while aligned or alignment is an aspect of a category system altogether. So location is that aspect of a category that tells you where it might be located in a map. Is it in technical, story, ideal, minimal, optimal? Knowing the location of a category is very helpful in knowing what kind of category it is that we're talking about, and will become very important in alignment. So coming to alignment, it is about how we vertically and horizontally align our categories through the category system. Horizontal alignment is about making sure that categories align from the most specific to the most abstract consistently through a category system. Vertical alignment, on the other hand, is about criticism. It is about aligning our beliefs and our thoughts and comparing them with those of others. And really, both are about criticism. On the vertical stage, you're comparing your thoughts and your categories with other people's thoughts and in categories. And on the horizontal, you're ensuring that your categories are both logical and apply to the now, are critical, are critiqued by what is. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about criticism. It's one of the most important parts of the category system. One of the reasons for the category system is so that we can talk to each other and learn from each other. So let's get into that. The most simple or apparent method of criticism is simply comparing ourselves to someone else. However, generally, this is not a very productive method. We don't learn a lot. We don't learn enough by comparing ourselves to other people, so we have to go more general. Going more general, we get to the level of stories. Now, stories are really complicated things. We kind of evolve them through time from what we experience of the all in the now, and we create memories, and from memories we create stories. Yet even though we all have a lot of commonality in our stories, we don't have the tools within the realm of stories to analyze and truly get down to a detailed comparison of what we can learn from each other's stories, how they are different, and how to criticize our stories. So because our stories are so complicated, we've had to develop other tools to analyze our stories and compare them, and that's where we have developed the realm of the conceptual. So in this realm of the conceptual, there are three methods I want to discuss, as well as something kind of like a meta-story. In fact, maybe this third issue needs to be more in the area of the story, which is our commonality, or the commons. So commonality, or the commons, is simply the idea that everything that we have in common, and that all human beings can be said to apparently share in common, is in the commons. I believe commonality will be an extremely big part of the Betterment Project, a worldview we can build together, as it were, of the apparent things we can all agree with. I think that will be very important. But it is more of a worldview than it is a method of criticism, so let's now move on to those. The three methods, or perhaps I should say dimensions, that I want to discuss here are livability, appearance, and consistency. And while there are some nuances I would like to develop further, these are roughly the equivalent of rhetoric, evidence, and argument. Moving just a little bit into those nuances, we can speak of these dimensions as being something like verified. With appearance and consistency, its fairly good examples are scientific facts and thought experiments, although that's not exhaustive. But with the idea of livability, I want to suggest something a little more, perhaps, controversial, and suggest that an idea can be advantageous or valuable or confirmed in a sense when it has a degree of motivation to it, when it has the capacity to endure itself or to help the person who holds the belief endure, and when it has the capacity to produce whatever values that belief suggests should be produced. And if that sounds relativistic or subjective, I mean, to a certain degree it is subjective, but I would suggest that there are a finite amount of beliefs which can produce the kind of values we would want them to produce. And this gives us something to build from. Okay, well, there are just 2 more ideas I'm going to cover in this video. The first of these is to suggest that critiques go in cycles, from the personal to the conceptual in a deductive way, and from the conceptual to the personal in an inductive way, so that critique does not only go one way, deductively or inductively, but it cyclically goes through these ideas, so that we are both critiquing our personal experiences, our personal principles, and the like, but we are also criticizing the large general principles and comparing them constantly to each other, going back and forth. And finally, I want to develop one more idea about systems. Now, if you'll recall my idea of singular linear chains, I would suggest to you that this is what logical principles have always been. Endpoints for a deduction from what is down to a singular point. However, when we make the move from singular linear to systemic, suddenly principles can be located throughout a category system. Now, I fully expect this to be a bit of a red flag for most classical logicians and philosophers. However, there are many reasons for this move, not all of which I can get into during this video. So looking into this a little bit more completely, as I said, we could talk about the story or the personal as systemic, but for now we'll stick with the conceptual. Well, if it hasn't become clear yet, a system is a set of, if you will, categories, parts, that when they are together, we could say together optimally or minimally, they produce something, and the something they produce is a systemic principle. This idea of systemic principles will, I believe, empower the Betterment Project to help us in avoiding oversimplifying ideas, avoiding ideology. It will allow us to see more clearly where our beliefs rest and where they relate to each other. And on that note, we conclude this episode of the Betterment Project. Thank you for watching.